Hi, I am Jeannette Sutton,
And I am Eddie Bertola.
and we welcome you to another episode of The Alerting Authority. As always, we encourage you to subscribe, follow, listen, and most importantly, participate in these podcasts. We want your questions, concerns, ideas, problems, pain points, and your success stories so that we as alerting authorities can better do our jobs and make our communities safer.
And we want to continue to thank our sponsors. And the sponsor for this episode is HQE Systems. They're a disabled, veteran-owned, full-service alert origination software provider. If you haven't clicked on the link and looked at them by now, we invite you to do so. HQE specializes in cutting-edge life safety and electronic security solutions. They help improve and provide solutions to all of your pain points. We're actually going to talk about some pain points today in the show, and this may apply. So they have the latest generation of outdoor warning sirens, indoor notifications, electronic mass notifications, and can control it all through one piece of software. So thank you to HQE.
I am really excited for who we have today. I mean, I'm always excited because we have such interesting people that we get to talk to. Today, we are talking about tsunami, and we have brought to the show Dave Snider, who is the Tsunami Warning Coordinator for the National Tsunami Warning Center based out of Palmer, Alaska. We've talked a lot about the tsunamis that have occurred in Northern California, and he brings all of the scientific understanding of how tsunamis work from end to end and where our local alerting authorities, state, local partners can really assist in making tsunami warnings more effective for their populations. A little bit about Dave. So before he joined the National Tsunami Warning Center, he was NWS Alaska's Alaska Weather TV program leader. He's also supplied Alaska's mariners and aviators with a daily heads up for travel, work, and critical weather decisions around Alaska for those who don't receive adequate weather information through weather apps. As well as television shows or web services from contemporary sources. So he did all of that through Alaska Weather TV. Really cool service that they have to get information out beyond the apps and TV shows. He has 25 years of award-winning broadcast weather and social media work in Colorado, North Carolina, Missouri, and Alaska. And he has provided the public and decision makers with crucial safety information during blizzards, hurricanes, severe thunderstorms, and tornado outbreaks, and tsunami. He has a professional and academic background with a bachelor's of science in aeronautics and a concentration in meteorology. And I am thrilled that Dave is joining us today. Dave, welcome to our show. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Great. So, we're going to go back a little ways to start our conversation about tsunami alerts and warnings relative to an event that occurred in 2024. So on December 5th, 2024, a wireless emergency alert was issued to a rather large portion of the West Coast for a tsunami. Probably many of our listeners remember this event. It included the entire Bay Area plus counties as far north as Oregon. So that's a lot of people, millions. Can you talk about that particular alert that was issued that day? Like, where did the alert go? Who received it? And if you heard back from anyone about what it was like, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So in December 2024, there was an earthquake just off the coast of California, and it was strong enough to push us into a procedural first message that was a tsunami warning. When tsunami warnings are issued, they go out in all directions all at once, including the partner level, the public level, and certainly the agency and other government groups that are supporting that response. That means everybody starts moving all at once at the same time. And that is a really hard thing to manage for any group, but certainly for something that doesn't happen very much, like a high impact, low frequency event called tsunami. So our challenge is in that moment to reinforce the right public actions and encourage the partner response to be effective with that consistent messaging. But the other side of that challenge is that the public is now looking for information at that local level. and partners are doing the same thing from us. So it's a really big switch that people are just having to absorb and react to when they were just going to get their groceries or going to swimming lessons or something, right? They weren't doing tsunami 5 seconds before that. So from southern Oregon all the way down to central California in the San Francisco Bay, a tsunami warning message went out, and it touched the public alert system, and everybody snapped into tsunami mode in all their different varieties and flavors and ways. That's what they started doing in that moment.
So there was the tsunami warning system triggered the iPause system, and
Yes.
it was basically like an earthquake that triggered the tsunami warning system, so that the messages went out over WIA, and you didn't even know how big the waves were going to be. You just knew that the earthquake was strong enough that it could trigger a tsunami along the coast.
That's right. So out of an abundance of caution, that's usually what our first message is it is that abundance of caution message. We sent out a warning because time of arrival was imminent. The waves could be large enough to create an impact, damage, death, destruction. We need to get people away from that danger zone, which is at the coast, and out of the inundation zones, which could be estuaries, nearby creeks, mouths of rivers, and the coastline for sure, and get them to high ground and away from that danger. The only way to do that today with our system is send that tsunami warning. That is an evacuation level message, basically. When we send that is the only message that travels at full distance and reaches, the public phone, your cell phone, your wireless device, through that iPause delivered WIA message. And that's the one that says, you are in danger, move away from the coast.
So if I can ask about those types of thresholds, because I imagine it's not, just we'll do it for this one, we're not going to do it for this one without any standards. Are there thresholds
Right.
that are set by the National Weather Service to kind of trigger an automated process? So if an earthquake is detected, it'd be like, yes, we're going to activate a tsunami warning for this one versus another.
Yeah, and it's not automated. It is. There's definitely people behind that process, right? But the process, once we decide on what that course of action will be, becomes automated after we send the message, I guess would be the right way to say that. So our analysts, our duty scientists here are constantly ready and analyzing earthquake alarms that happen all day long. The earth is always in motion. There's always earthquakes in different parts of the world, and some of those are close to us. But in this case, this one was just off the coast of California, and it was at or around that low 7.0 threshold. Now, 7.0 is a big earthquake, no doubt about it. But for tsunami, it's a lot more clear if those earthquakes are larger in the low to mid 8 range, certainly the 9 range. You think of 1964 and the 9.2 in Alaska. No question about it. That's creating a tsunami if it's in the right place under the ocean. But the 7s are a little bit more on that question line and kind of that shoulder gray zone, if you will. And the reason we have that level set to start really sending messages in that 7.0 range is because they can also shake loose the underwater sediment, on the ocean floor. And those can cause underwater landslides, which can cause a tsunami. So again, out of an abundance of caution, we message for those, but that was just above that line to go from advisory, which is just a lower level warning kind of impact for just the coastline, versus a warning, which is water coming into dry spots on land, coming into city streets and really impacting everyday people's lives versus just the marine community's lives. And so that warning was sent just as that first procedural message. But you're right. In that moment, though, we don't know a tsunami exists or it doesn't exist. And that's our very next course of action is, okay, we send that first message. Now we seek to confirm or deny the existence of a tsunami. If there is one, we measure it. If we can measure it, then we can forecast it. And then we can also improve that impact expectation for our coastal partners and public to either change the alert strategy and then what our next safety steps are going to be, or start reducing that alert level back to a normal state, a green state. Things are back to normal.
it sounds incredibly complicated. And yet, I think that there's an assumption that if a person receives a wireless emergency alert, you know what's going to happen. It's almost like it's
Right.
predicted that a tsunami is going to occur. And yet, prediction is a really bad term to use because it's really more about the ability to observe the changes, which is going to indicate how bad things are going to be. Is that right?
I think that that's a really important point you're making there because when we're part of the Weather Service, so the Weather Service and the other side of the weather house um, is in the prediction business, right? And we predict things like hurricanes weeks ahead of time. We can see that conditions are shaping up. We need to start preparing. The season's becoming more active. And then here's a big hurricane rolling up on the southeast coast. That's normal stuff for us. We know when we're going to have a severe storm day, and these storms are capable of producing large hail and tornadoes. And then we issue a tornado warning to get out of the way for that. And here it comes, right? And we see these things play out with regularity every season. Tsunamis are different. We cannot predict that an earthquake is going to occur, and we can't predict if there's going to be a tsunami from an earthquake we can't predict. So it's really hard because we are sending out alerts with the same terminology from things that are predictable. And tsunami warning is that abundance of caution message because in that very first message, we don't know. Right. But we can have some reasonable expectation that it's at least plausible that these impacts could occur. And then we have to rule out that they're not there if they're not there. And then if they are there, well, then we have a limited amount of time to continue that effort to improve people's outcomes.
Well, I really appreciate it's. I know you're using the terms, abundance of caution, because ultimately, I mean, we're trying to give people as much notice as we possibly can. And just to kind of go into that, if the National Weather Service, as you said, only initiates the first tsunami WIA that goes out through IPAWS, it would mean there really isn't follow
Mhm.
up from the National Weather Service for those that were just alerted. And so we're going to talk about partnerships just for a second. Can you describe the role that your partners can take to help communication with the public just be better, help them understand the threat or actions
Yeah.
they should take?
Right. So I think the first step is really on us, the Weather Service, to speak with our partners and say, here's what we mean when we say these terms and when we're taking these actions. These are this is the framework that we're operating in. Take a look at this. And now how can we help our partners support that more localized or regional messaging that we've just backed off of? We've thrown something over the wall and said, here go. But we need to make sure that they understand what we're doing and what we're going to throw over the wall. And I think we're getting to that point. We have a really wonderful integrated warning team concept for the entire nation, really the entire service area of both the National and Pacific Tsunami Warning Centers. And this is called the National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program. As part of that, there's a warning coordination subcommittee that I would invite any of our emergency managers to participate with, especially at the state and regional level, but also at the local level. Ask more questions and get involved where you can. But part of that is supporting those recommendations in that process for those immediate alerting events that occur and making sure that we're using the right language, that we're using the right process, and that process is understood at all levels of that service. So in that, a communication plan that basically allows the states, regions, and communities to look at this and say, okay, here's where we can be effective by inserting our messages and our actions that stay in line with this stage of the process. And then now we can see where the stages are shifting and we're going from a monitoring stage to maybe a cancellation stage or whatever that may be, that we're moving together, hand in hand and walking in the same direction instead of inserting language that might be confusing at different points in that process. That today I would say is probably a lot more likely because we're not all on that same communication plan. So my goal is to make sure that all of our state partners understand, that entire process end to end, and that we can find better ways to support that, more regional, state, and community messaging that keeps us all moving in that same direction.
Mhm.
And can I ask you to help with we use different terminology, and if you're new to this space or if you've been around this space for a while, you may hear the term WFO used.
Hmm. Mhm.
often. Do you mind explaining kind of what a WFO is and why it's invaluable for locals and others to have a good
Right.
relationship?
Absolutely. So, for the National Tsunami Warning Center, I would say my big three communication points at first would be the National Weather Service WFO, or Weather Forecast Office. That is the next scale of service I have that is also in support of that local community or regional service model for message dissemination. And for the National Tsunami Warning Center, we have direct access with our messages through Weather Service headquarters to touch the IPOS system for warning. And that serves the wireless emergency alert, or WEA message, right? So we can go pretty direct and fast on that. But for the emergency alert system, EAS, that is directly served by the weather forecast offices today. So that part of the message has to go through the NOAA weather radio system that only the forecast offices have control of today. And so they take that message, port it over there, push the button, it transmits out on the FM radio. And that's how states' EAS systems are served. And if that process isn't complete from the WFOs, then EAS doesn't happen.
And then thinking a little bit about the role of local alerting authorities.
Mhm.
I think in this particular incident, we were observing messages going out over the PBS warn to see if additional messages were being
Mhm.
issued along the coast and in the Bay Area at various times. And then also talking a little bit with county emergency managers about whether or not they use their opt-in alerting system to issue messages. And there was a real variety in which counties utilized any of their alerting uh, capabilities to reach the public. And if you were to consider the role of local alerting authorities and the different channels that they have, do you see specific things that you wish that they would engage in, or that is part of your overall mission of trying to help to bring everybody onto the same page and thinking about who is using different capabilities and what they might be sending to their constituents?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, if you're sending out a wireless emergency alert, be sure that you have the right information in there and it's the right time to send that information. There's the concern I have in general with all alerting, but certainly in a tsunami event, is just alert fatigue. There's so many different ways and notifications, and call it notifications, that you're getting from different apps and different resources that you have that are all important at some time. But if they're all blasting you with information, and especially if it's all different, that's not going to have a good outcome for us in that moment, especially a highly impactful moment where a impactful tsunami is coming ashore to a very large population group. So what I would say to, the community teams, just make sure that we're moving together with that messaging, and that if there is something that we need to do before the next tsunami arrives, what are those changes that we can do, whether they're on that full official message side that's shaping the outcome of the things that you're seeing on your systems, even if they're third-party systems, or what can we do in between those messages and other service areas like NWS chat that we're using with emergency management groups now? What can we do in there to help your understanding that supports that in between messaging that we're not in charge of, right? Either way, we have a great opportunity to produce a better outcome that keeps everybody safe, keeps fewer people confused, because there's always second order consequences. When large amounts of people move suddenly, bad things are going to happen, even if they're not water coming in that we call a tsunami, right? We want to avoid that too. The other thing that we have to fix as part of the weather service, and I think, we're moving there slowly, but one thing we have to fix is our ability to more discreetly and effectively deliver a message to the people that are truly in that hazard zone, and eliminate and really focus the attention away from the people that don't need to get that message. Right now, we are delivering a warning message over the wireless emergency alert system to a very broad region by weather service zone, which is a public weather forecast zone. It's a weather forecast zone that is not tied to the tsunami hazard zone. And it's so much larger in many cases. And especially in the case that we were talking about in December 24 for Central and Northern California and Southern Oregon. Way too many people got that message. And people that got that message moved because their phone said, tsunami warning, you are in danger, right? Most of those people were not. So if we can fix that, we also greatly improve that outcome. And we're going to reduce that sense of false alarm or over alerting too.
Yeah. I think going back to our introduction to the event that happened in 2024, we said a sizable area, but we weren't really clear in describing that. I mean, these were entire counties that received the message. So
Right.
from the coast inland, miles and miles and miles, and in some cases to the tops of mountains, which the populations that are on the top of a mountain in the middle of a county far inland from the coast, obviously they're not at risk. And yet this is an issue related to the technology that
Yes.
has restricted the ability of the tsunami centers to issue more targeted messaging.
Exactly right. We know what these hazard areas are, and we can take a map out on paper and draw lines around and get pretty close to where we need to be. The challenge that we have today is we have all these different overlapping artificial boundaries on a map that we have to use in order for that technology to service the end user. And so when we send these messages out, we reference them today by those weather service forecast zones, which are not designed to serve the tsunami needs. So we're using something right there out of the gate that doesn't match. But those zones also overlap with the census zones. You might refer to them as FIPS zones, the Federal Information zones that then reach the IPAWS system and then transmit beyond that. And then if you add in a third-party dissemination systems, your cell phone towers, those could have overreach and blast beyond those boundaries. So it just keeps going and propagating well outside the original intent, which isn't even the best true intent that we understand today. But our technology and that whole layered support all the way from end to end doesn't effectively serve the end user that needs to do something with that information right away.
One more reason for local partners to understand the capabilities of the system, which are truly phenomenal, but also the limitations of the system, which means over alerting geographically, way beyond the areas of those who are going to be directly affected. And the importance of those local alerting authorities in helping you to get the message out to the right people, so that they understand what's happening, who should be taking action, who should not be taking action,
Right.
why we don't have all of the information yet, but that information is continually being updated, and that if that information, where it's available and how they're going to continue to receive that information over time. I mean, the partnership that is necessary to keep the local public aware and out of danger is really vital in the case of a tsunami warning.
It is. And the beginning of the event is just as important as the close or the cancellation of that event. And so something that I know we've talked about in the past is we start that alert process, but today, I would say we don't effectively close or end that part of the process either. Good practice would be to send the other message, and we don't do that. We only send one that touches everybody's phone and says you are in danger with a tsunami warning, which we've changed the language too, so that should improve. On the next warning we send, someone's going to get the first new version of that, but it no longer says that you are in danger part. But we don't send something that says, okay, and now we're done. There is a reason for that. Doesn't mean that we can't fix and change some of these things, but one of the problems that we have in a tsunami event is, let's say an impactful tsunami has occurred. As we are reducing the alerts and things are starting to stabilize and settle down as far as the inundation goes, the tsunami warning centers will cancel a message. We don't say all clear because the tsunami is not over at that point. It has turned into more of a regional or localized event, but it's no longer an inundation level event. But strong and unusual currents can still continue for hours or days after a really large tsunami, and they do. And even ones that we would say were pretty small still have impacts. People in California in 2022, after the Hunga Tonga eruption, had problems swimming in the water. Scuba divers reported problems, and they thought they were in danger in some cases. But we don't have that knowledge at the Tsunami Warning Center level to effectively message or serve that community. We leave that up to the local community emergency managers, the harbor masters, and other safety response teams to advise their community of what that risk and danger is in that moment. So our website will go back to green. We're not sending any more messages out, but we do not say all clear because it very well could not be. We don't want to send the wrong message. But we're also not sending any other messages at that point, and we're not doing that over a broader audience through the wireless emergency alert or anything else.
Mm.
No,
And
I
I
love
know
highlighting this type of partnership, and I think the partnership is it's imperative that we understand it. So if you are a state, local, county type of of alerting authority, I hope you are listening to this because it's up to you, and there's a lot of responsibility. Now, it is impractical for the National Weather Service to know all of the specific details of your local jurisdiction. And I would say it's also impractical for you to have, a meteorologist in every county. It'd be wonderful if everybody did, right? And so having this partnership is so important. And I know there's complexities to it, but I think what you're hearing, hopefully, is get involved and make sure to let your specific communities know what they need to know. Let them know what the dangers are because, with the Tsunami Warning Center, we are getting critical information and then it's up to us to act on it. Um, and then it kind of shifting, like it does seem complex, the system. And one of the challenges we've been talking about is who sends the message and updates and all those things. But another challenge is also understanding when a message is sent. Now, um, I know we've talked about the different thresholds, but there are other, quote unquote levels that also warrant communicating about a possible threat. In fact, there was a tsunami watch issued in July 2025 for an earthquake in Russia. Can you talk a little bit about those types of various levels that exist?
Sure. The tsunami warning that we've been talking about for Northern and Central California and Southern Oregon seems like that's the easiest one to understand. It says warning. Most of us understand what warning means in a lot of different contexts. But a watch is something very different for tsunami, especially, again, compared back with weather terms that I think most of us understand, at least at some baseline level. So our three main action messages from tsunami are tsunami warning, tsunami advisory, which is a lower level alert and action message for the coastline and the harbors. But the watch means we know there's a tsunami and we're responding in an event here to something that's coming at us from far away. However, we don't know if the impacts from this are something actionable yet. So in those early moments, let's say the first, second, or third message or so, it would be possible to see a tsunami watch issued for something like an earthquake that is closer to Russia, that is likely creating a tsunami and crossing the ocean, but we have more than 3 hours to respond to this. So the impacts are somewhat unknown. The time is distant or far off, so more than 3 hours. And once we get up to that 3-hour threshold, we're going to make a decision here before the partner reaches that 3-hour threshold that we're either going to move this up to an advisory or warning because we become more certain about the impacts that are expected there and have a forecast available, or we're going to determine that no action is required and we'll reduce that watch and remove that area from any type of alert status. And that's what happened for a large portion of the Gulf of Alaska and Alaska coastline. Closer to the earthquake out in the Aleutians, we kept those advisory and warning levels up. And then for the lower 48 coastline, we kept the alert levels up as well. But there's a large chunk of the United States coastline and British Columbia that were removed from that alert level because we did determine that there was no further action required. And that's a good thing, right? But a watch puts you on notice that more information is coming, an event is occurring that could affect your coastline, and we're still working to get some more information, but we also have the benefit of time to make those decisions.
I think one of the things that might be challenging for if there are members of the public that are listening to this and they're not familiar with this language around products being issued
Mhm.
is understanding where to go to get that kind of information, because products that are issued are not pushed out to the public through like a wireless emergency alert. They're posted somewhere for you to go and find that information. So, so sometimes there's things that are happening the public's never even going to know about because it just frankly does not yet affect them. So, where can the public go to get information about watches that have been issued as products or advisories that have been issued as products but are not yet reaching that level of a warning?
Sure thing. Uh, the first place I would say for anyone to just bookmark is tsunami.gov. It's tsunami.gov. That website will always have our latest alert information up, and it will also have information up for earthquakes that are not tsunamigenic, that we've analyzed. We've determined there is no risk, no danger to your coastline. Earthquakes happen all the time. If you have an earthquake app on your phone, you're probably already playing along with us there, but you'll know that just because there's a large earthquake somewhere close to the ocean or close to the coast, that clearly doesn't mean there's always a tsunami threat with that either. The website will also display those messages. Those are tsunami information statements. And they're another weird message in the world of weather service. It's a no threat message. It means, yeah, you might have felt that. You might have seen the water do something weird. Great. You probably moved away from the coast because that's what our safety training says. But now we're telling you, go back to doing what you're doing. You're okay. Right. We send on average one of those every day of the week, right? That's how often this happens. But they're no action messages, no threat. But if you go to tsunami.gov, you'll see those listed out from both the National and Pacific Tsunami Warning Centers, and pretty much a year-round thing.
Useful.
So, if we can go back just really quickly, because I know we're kind of starting to come back to or go towards the end here, but regarding the 2024 alert,
Mhm.
um, we've talked about geography. We talked about because the alert area that was essentially you've heard FIPS codes. We were talking about a lot of those. If you're an alerting authority, you'll see county FIPS codes where you can just click on that and it has the entire county essentially highlighted already. I mean, it's geo
Mhm.
targeted for you. So as these are selected and we're pushing it out, so we have geography, we have timing. So we've kind of talked about some of the problems. What do you think the future of tsunami warnings can be? And are there changes coming? I know you may not be able to like say, hey, we're working on, X, Y, and Z, but like what do you see for the future?
Just this morning, we were looking at some of our variations in our CAP messaging, right? Today, we issued two messages for CAP. One comes from the tsunami.gov website. The other comes from the National Weather Service headquarters. Both great ideas. They both have different elements in there, but they need to be the same thing. They need to say the same thing. So we're working on that. I can tell you that we are actively working on solving that problem, and that alone will make a difference. I'd love to hear from folks that are using either one of those CAP messages today and say, hey, dial this in a little bit more. That would be really great. Tsunami.gov is getting a refresh and a redesign, not just a facelift, but a behind the scenes data management reset that's been sorely needed for years. I can't say when that's going to be delivered. I don't know. But I know it, in relative near terms, soon. We'll use air quotes there, soon. But that'll be an exciting thing that will allow us to, improve our level of service to the public and to our partners for sure. Behind the scenes for partners specifically, NWS chat on the Slack system there. If you're not using Slack with a weather service in your local forecast office today, or you're a state and federal partner above that local level, ask questions, send me a note. I'll happy to get you dialed into that and connect you with the right people. But that is where we're doing business in between our official messages for tsunami today. And we're really leaning into that. The other thing that I think is going to take a lot more work and it requires coordination with other federal and state agencies to get this right. But we can improve our areas that we are touching with those alert messages. If you're in that alert community and you've heard the word polygons before, those messaging polygons, those areas that we are specifically geo-targeting with that message, those have to get smaller. Those have to get more discrete. But that is a full team process here. It is not something just the Weather Service can do. When we can align the technology with the message, with the geo-targeted area, this is going to be amazing. One concern, though, that I have, a little asterisk on the side of that, is for all these people that have been getting messages for years and going, why did I get this message? One day you're not going to get that message because you're not in that area. And that's also going to take messaging from us in support of that public decision to improve the service. Suddenly that's going to feel a lot different to a lot of people. So we're going to have to work hard on that to support the change that we need to have. But it's, that doesn't mean that nothing's happening either. It doesn't mean that you're not close enough to the coast to have a tsunami problem if you go to the coast. So that's going to take some work. But, there's a lot of really cool things that are happening. We just need to consistently move there with all of our federal partners and our state partners and our communities. Keep our foot down on the gas on the Weather Service side to make sure that we're improving the dissemination, moving this out of the first best model and move this into the next generation of service that we know we need and have needed for a long time, and just keep going. And I'm confident that we can get there.
I'm excited for all of the potential improvements that are coming. I think it's really needed. I mean, these events don't happen very often, and yet when they do, they really cause a lot of conversation, which means there's an opportunity for some improvements at that moment too.
Yes.
But before the next event happens, if you had the opportunity to describe your vision of what an end-to-end tsunami warning looks like, where all your partners are working together, what would it look like?
Oh, wow. No, that's a great question.
And I'm sure it's going to happen all within a year, right? We're going to make it happen.
I wish it could. I wish I had that magic wand. That would feel really good. Wow. I think I would love for our partners and even our public to see the second that our duty scientists are sitting at the analysis system here. They've analyzed the earthquake. They've made a decision about the message that they're going to send. But that moment right there before they literally click the button and send that message out to the world, I'd love for people to see and experience that, because there's a sensible pause when that happens. It's not just a bam, 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 bam. It happens pretty quick, but if you're in the room, you can tell that, do I really want to do this? Okay, I know what this means. Here we go. Let's do it. And I'm sure that's the same case with, any of our weather forecasters issuing a tornado warning. I mean, it's a sensible pause. And in that moment there, the very next thing I want is our partners to go, and now we're responding, right? And that's the message that I try and put on our NWS chats. It's like, hey, we're starting an event response mode. And from that moment on, it's imperative that we're all moving together. So I would love for our system to fully support a communications plan and understanding of, okay, we're in stage 1 here of this mode. We don't know a lot. We're in stage 2. We're knowing more things. We're measuring water. We're forecasting. Stage 3, we're kind of monitoring this, and we see things starting to settle down, but they're not settled yet. Stage 4, we're turning things off. We're going back to, more of a steady state. The ocean is calm, but there's still some localized risks. And stage 5, we're done. We're doing after action, post-event review kind of things, and figuring out how to support that flow of, a stage, following the bouncing ball, with the song that used to be on the TV screen. That's what I'm thinking about. I think that would make a world of difference if all of our groups, everybody from the federal response groups, the Coast Guard, and, our state warning points, all the way down to, our mega counties in California, to our, very small, we'll lovingly say mom and pop emergency management communities there on, coastal remote areas in Alaska and Oregon. Everybody has the same need and has the same desire to get this right, but just at very different scales. And if we're all moving together and understanding what we mean when we say these terms, that'll change this game, right? Because we are 5 minutes away from the next tsunami, right?
Right. Understanding the terms, recognizing their particular role and relationship to the others around them, having messages that they've thought about beforehand and how they're going to
Right.
communicate that effectively and consistently between partners.
Yeah.
um, how they're going to be utilizing all the different channels that they have to provide updated information, whether it's driving people to their county website or posting information on social media or using their other partners to continue to get information out. All of those things need to be part of that real great awareness that you were just describing. There's so much to be done. How do we get there?
I mean, I think just doing stuff like this, because again, hopefully people who are listening, um, A, don't assume that the public and community know exactly what to do when they get a tsunami warning, right?
Right.
And I think unfortunately some of us in the alerting space may not know. But after hearing this today, you have a better understanding of who your partners are. And if you're not engaged in that conversation, just as Dave said, there are ways to get connected. So
Right.
when the event happens, you know what to do. And I will tell you, when the event happens, the time for preparation is over. You have to act. So the time to prepare is now. The other thing I just wanted to say kind of a thank you to, and I know we had we have a pre-meeting when we do these, and I really learn a lot before we do a podcast. Um, I am really grateful for the amount of science and effort that goes in, as you said, before that button is pushed. It's not just some computer, because there's some buoy that's 15 miles, or 30, whatever miles out in the ocean that pops up and be like, okay, we have one.
Right.
There's effort, there's study, there's research. And I appreciate knowing that. And it gives me a lot more confidence in the system. And if anything, this has made me want to learn more about it. So thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you both. And I would say to the local level listeners, if your community is not tsunami ready today, if you're storm ready, perhaps, or maybe you're not even storm ready, consider looking into that tsunami ready process. It supports all of the ZSF functions there that we need in a response, and especially the reception of the alert and the information, then what you do with that alert information with your community, practicing an evacuation, and having those relationship and those conversations that support a better relationship with your local service team and the National Tsunami Warning Center. We're happy to help move you into that space, and that helps all of us do better when that moment arrives. But also, make sure you know where that tsunami card is in the deck, because that card will be played someday. And if you just set it aside every day saying, well, that card's not going to turn up, it will when you least expect it. So make sure you know where your binder is, dust it off, flip the pages, make sure the numbers and the phone numbers and all that contact information is right. And if you need help doing that, let me know. And I and the members of the National Weather Service team and your local support team with the Weather Service and all the other federal agencies will be happy to work with you to get that right.
Yeah. I have just really enjoyed hearing from you, Dave, and also all of the conversations we've had over time talking about messaging and the challenges there and the improvements that are being made to help to reduce public fears so that they're better informed and can better understand what's being communicated to them. So I just really appreciate the intense effort that you and the team has been making over the years, and just really appreciate the time to talk with you today. Thank you.
Thank you both. It's my pleasure. I know we could do better things with this entire community and your listeners. So thanks in advance to everybody listening today as well.
That was a really great conversation. I loved hearing from Dave all about how tsunami really works, because I think that sometimes there's a misunderstanding about who does what and why the initial warning goes out the way that it does and why there's no follow-up and how partners can be part of it. And just really critical information that is needed for local understanding to be more effective. There's one thing that he started to talk about that we kind of glossed right over, and I wanted to say something about it, is he said that they got rid of the words, "you are in danger," in the tsunami message. And it's not because people aren't in danger, but as long as that polygon is drawn that issues a tsunami warning to people on the top of Mount Tam who are clearly not in danger, that phrase in that message, it just doesn't apply to everyone who gets the message. And so by removing that, they've removed some of the concern that people expressed when they received that message in December of 2024.
No, absolutely. Partnerships, right? And I love how he really hit on the partnerships. And as a local, it irritates me to no end whenever I see, let's say a tsunami warning or some type of warning from the National Weather Service go out. And then the local out there, emergency manager says, oh, well, okay, they sent it. I don't have to do anything. Well, he illustrated very clearly how important it is for the locals to do their part to help and to really be that mechanism where the additional information can be stored and given. I love that. And I think as we were chatting afterwards, I mean, just you can prepare for a hurricane season, you can prepare for a tornado season. We have dry seasons, we have fire seasons. There is no tsunami season. It always exists, or at least the chance exists. And I mean, I think you mentioned it, just you need to be ready, review your plan, as he talked about, because it will come up at some point. Now, if you live in, the central of the United States, it may not come up, but still at the same time, the lessons learned from this will, as you work with the National Weather Service. And just to reiterate, he mentioned having that contact through Slack, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't have it, to reach out and get it.
Yeah. Yeah. NWS Chat moved to Slack a few years ago, and it is the place where all that information is shared. So I just really appreciated the thinking with him about how to move things forward. And we at the Alerting Authority want to help. We are here to help provide training to your organization, to you individually. We can provide a message audit to show you where you can improve the messages that you've been sending and help you to think through your templates as you're developing new messages for future events. We can provide assistance in thinking through policy. And really exciting news is that we set our first warning boot camp that we are now taking participant registrations for. That will be held on March 9th through 13th. It is virtual, and we are only taking 10 people. And so I'm excited to see who's going to join us in our first warning boot camp. It should be a great week.
Perfect. And we want to thank everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, share. Please leave us comments. Please leave us reviews. Let us know how we're doing and different things that you like about the show and other topics that you want to hear about. We know that here at the Alerting Authority, every second has a story, and we want to be here to help share yours. So thank you for listening.